Hey, welcome to my channel. It's Pope Simon X, and we're here to talk about my life because that's what we do here. Oh my god, this is a crazy video to make because it has been over 3 years since I made my first video, and over a year since I made my last video. Life has been nuts. In lately the best possible way. But over the course of the last 3 years, it hasn't always been the best possible way. Like, I have gone through some really hard times and some really good times. And you guys didn't get to come along for the ride because I didn't know what to make of it. Like, I've been thinking about this a lot. And it was really difficult to make videos when I was in the middle of a lot of the hard things I went through, because they were hard and I didn't have context or aftersight to look back at them and see how they fit in the grand picture to make things better. So it was just me dealing with hard things. This video is a 3-year look back at the decision to leave my husband and come out as a lesbian versus where I am now as a trans man, weeks away from getting top surgery, and how things have shifted. 3 years. Yeah, 3 years. 3 whole years. That blows my brain. If you had asked me 3 years ago where I saw myself in 3 years, I would have been like, I don't know, maybe with a girl, ha 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 ha. And that would have been about as far as I could have pictured. So good news, I am with a girl. So I got that part figured out. Best choice. Definitely a good choice to date women for me. But things have changed in a lot of ways. It has been a wild ride in the truest sense, which means that I've had incredible highs and I've had incredible lows. A lot of lows. So one of the reasons that I stopped making the videos was actually because I was uncomfortable hearing how much happier I looked, because I didn't feel very happy for a lot of the last couple of years. And you're like, oh no, why did you do all those things if you weren't going to be happy? But coming out as a lesbian and then coming out as a trans man brought up a lot of really deep soul sadness that I had for my entire life, basically. And I had to process that. And I didn't have the tools to process that. And I didn't have the support to process that. So I had to create the support and create the tools and try to figure out how to live. I actually wanted to live. So, little known fact about me, or a little known to you guys, is that ever since I was about 11 years old, I have wanted to die. I just hated myself and my life. Retrospect, that's when puberty started. I started going through prepubescent stuff at about 11 years old, and that's when my depression started. I don't think that puberty was the only reason I was having depression. I had a lot of other things going on in my life, but puberty definitely was a factor. And like I said, looking back, I can see how everything fit together a lot better. But when you're going through it, you don't have hindsight to give you clarity. So I just wanted to die, and I didn't know why. I felt like I had this deep, dark secret, and that if I ever really tapped into myself, I would discover what the deep, dark secret was, and that my life would fall apart. And all that kind of is true. When I did tap into my deep, dark secret, which was I was queer and trans, my life did fall apart. I can see why I had those fears. And I don't know that if I had done it earlier in my life that I would have had the strength to do it. So I give myself a whole lot of grace for my ignorance, even if it was kind of self-chosen, because I really don't know that I could have done it without the progress that I made in my 20s and 30s, 20s and early 30s. Like, I don't know if I could have gone through what I went through in the last 3 years in terms of change and growth without the foundation that I developed before that. So that's a big lesson. Don't pressure people to come out before they're ready to, because if you do, they may not be ready to deal with the consequences. Just let people figure themselves out in their own time. It was the best timing for me. I figured it out in the best timing for me. I still have plenty of life to live as myself, so that's exciting. But at the same time, I had developed the coping strategies I needed to survive. So when I came out as trans to myself, that was when I was hospitalized the first time. It wasn't right away. It took a little bit for it all to kind of settle in. But I got so suicidal that I did not feel fully safe, because all of these deep, dark feelings that I had been running away from my entire life came to the surface, and they were too much. So I used the coping skills and the strategies I had until they didn't work anymore. And when they didn't work anymore, I made a call for help and I went to the hospital. And then I did it again and again and again and again. Every single time I went to the hospital because I wanted to live. When we sit here and judge people who have mental health issues, a lot of the things that we don't realize is the layers of story that go behind it. If I told the average person I meet that I've been hospitalized 6 times for mental health, they're going to have crazy ideas of me. What they're missing is that every single time I chose to go to the hospital because I wanted to live. And that may seem crazy because, like I said, I was so suicidal that I felt like I needed to go to the hospital. But I went to the hospital before I reached my breaking point. Every single time, because I knew I was getting close to that breaking point. Actually, the first time, I think I reached my breaking point. It was kind of, time was a miracle, and I have no other way to describe it. If I hadn't got a phone call when I did, I probably wouldn't be alive today. But I got a phone call right at the right moment from my girlfriend at the time. And I realized that I wanted to see her again. And if I wanted to see her again, then maybe I should go to the hospital. So I called somebody up and had them take me to the hospital. But every time after that, because I had reached that breaking point that first time, I knew when I was getting close to that breaking point. And so as soon as I started getting close to that breaking point, I hospitalized myself before I reached the breaking point so that I would stay safe, because I wanted to live. I wanted to see what life would be like as Simon. Even before I had the words to explain that, that's what I wanted. I wanted to see what I could build for myself if I really got to be myself. But I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the medication. I was bouncing around the country. I'm in North Carolina now. I don't remember if I told you guys I was going to North Carolina in my last video. Yeah, I'm in North Carolina now. So I've driven down to Florida. Like, I joked that I should have driven all the way down to the Keys in Florida so that I could be at the most northwest part of the country and the most southeast part of the country in the same year. I didn't make it all the way down to the Keys last year, but last year, within the course of a few months, I literally was at the very tip top of Washington in the northwest corner, like as far as you can go on land, and then drove all the way down I made it to Orlando. That's as far south as I made it. In Florida. But yeah, so I've been across the country. I've moved multiple times. I lived in Arizona, I lived in Utah, I lived in Seattle. And I'm going to go into a lot of those things in the course of the next few videos, which means there will be more videos. I think I'm ready to tell my story because now I have some retrospect to be able to put the pieces together. But anyway, the point of me telling you what I told you is because I didn't have stability. I had no stability in my life. The one thing that was stable was my will to live. And that's why medicines failed me, and I didn't have a doctor that I could go to go get on new medicines. So like that was probably would have saved me from the first hospitalization. maybe all of them. If I had had stable doctors, if I had stable care, if I had stable housing, if I had stable, right? Like the lack of stability really messed with my ability to take care of myself. So I did the best I could with what I had. And the best I could with what I had equaled bouncing around, trying to find somewhere to settle, trying to find somewhere that I could build that stability, trying to find a home base. And I thought I found it a couple times, and every single time, for one reason or another, it didn't work out. I was fired from a job. I got really sick. I got COVID and couldn't keep another job. One of my hospitalizations spiraled me into a deeper hospitalization because my life was threatened while I was in the hospital. And I went back to a different hospital, but it was like the terriblest hospital I've ever been to. And that's saying a lot, given I've been to 6 of them. And they didn't care. Like, I just stayed in my room for 7 days and then got an infection and went home. Like, that's literally what happened. But I was so spiraled after those 2 that I wasn't suicidal anymore, so I didn't need to be in the hospital, but I really needed help. It was too much for my girlfriend at the time, so she distanced herself from me. Even though she continued to support me in a lot of other ways, she was no longer capable of providing that emotional support because I was too much. And that was hard. That was a hard lesson. So I've had all of these lessons and all of these growing experiences, and I've gone across the country and been hospitalized. And the one thing that the biggest takeaway I have from it is that it was worth it. As crazy as that sounds, as absolutely bonkers as it sounds, that I would have given up my stable life where I had a degree laid out and I had a husband and I had a path forward and I was stable and happy, that I gave that up for 3 years of bouncing around the country, having no idea where I was going to land, having no idea what was going to happen, and being really, really stressed all the time and being hospitalized 6 times. That may sound crazy that it was worth it, but let me tell you something. I went to counseling today because I do that. Now that I'm stable, I have a regular counselor and a regular doctor, and I go to them regularly, and it is great. Yeah, so I went to counseling today, and for the first time, I looked at her in the eyes and I said, I have hope without baggage. And what I mean is, in the before times, that's what I call 2020 and before, like before coming out as a lesbian, the before times. Sometimes I had hope. Actually, a lot of times I had hope. I was a pretty hopeful person. But there was always baggage. There was always stuff holding me back. There was always this deep sadness rooted deep inside of me. There was always fear. There was so much anxiety. There was so much dysphoria that I didn't know what was. There were all of these things that were holding me back. So even when I felt hope, it was like muffled. And today, I feel hope without the baggage. I don't have dysphoria every day. I don't have anxiety every day. I am not constantly afraid of some deep, dark secret revealing itself because I've already gone through all of that. Even if there is some other deep, dark secret, I've gone through worse. Like, I can't put words on how powerful it is to not be afraid of myself anymore. To not be afraid of what's going to happen if somebody finds out the truth about me. If I find out the truth about me. Like, I was running from myself. When I was 18 or 19, I have this in a notebook written down. I wrote down that there was some deep, dark secret that I was afraid that if I let myself find out, it would ruin everybody's opinion of me. Well, guess what? That's me being trans, me being queer. And I found it out, and it did ruin a lot of people's opinions of me. But I also learned to love myself in a way that do you know what it's like to look at yourself in the mirror and be happy by what you see? Because up until really recently, I did not. I always looked in the mirror. To try to find a way to make myself like myself. always. I was never looking at myself in the mirror to see me. I didn't know what me looked like. I used to spend hours staring at myself in the mirror as a teenager. Literally hours. Like, I have very clear memories of this, staring in my mirror and being like, do I look like myself today? And the older I got, the more and more often the answer was no. And I didn't know what to make of it, so I stopped doing it. I stopped looking at myself in the mirror because I stopped seeing myself in the mirror. So there was this pretty girl in the mirror, because I was a pretty girl. And there was nothing that I really could find fault in her that was beyond an average flaw. Like, you know, there might be some pimples, or there might be, you know, as I got older, I started to get a couple of wrinkles in a couple of places or whatever, but I did the work on those, and it's not like I had any problem with those. That wasn't the problem. I just never connected with who I saw in the mirror. And today I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, oh my God, like, that dude's awesome. And you guys, my hair is a disaster today. It actually looks better in front of the mural. You can't see this like piece sticking up in the back as well. Now you can, whatever, you can tell. I'm making this video now, even though I'm publishing a video to the world where I look like a disaster, and I still like myself more in this video than I ever did before. And it's taken 3 years to get there, but it was the hope of getting here and the pieces of it, the glimmers of it I saw in the course of my transition that made me keep going. The desire to live as Simon kept me alive. And I had to work through all of these years of baggage and all of these years of trauma and all of these years of stuffing myself down. And I had to work through self-hatred, self-loathing. I had to work through projections from other people. I had to work through being abandoned by friends and family. I had to work through all of these different things where it came down to I had myself to trust and rely on. And I discovered I was enough for myself. And I didn't discover I was enough for myself as Cindy. Cindy was fine. But Simon is who I am. And Simon is who I always wanted to be. I just didn't have the words for it. There's a lot more to my story that you'll get to hear over the next little bit. I plan on making more videos. For real, this time I have the equipment and the stability to actually be able to promise that. I don't know how often I'll be making them, but I have some big ideas and some big goals, and if I can get my life together at all, I plan on doing some cool things. So I hope you stick around and you keep coming back so that you can find out all these cool ideas that I have going on. I have a book in the works that is maybe the weirdest book in existence, and I don't really even care if anybody else likes it because I like it. So yeah, I'll talk about that. I'll talk about other things. I have some other big ideas that I'm starting to work on. Eventually I'll have a website up and things like that too. But in the meantime, I'll just keep making these videos when I get a chance and my life is organized enough that I can do that. I couldn't have said that a year ago or 2 years ago. I wanted to be making these videos, but between the lack of retrospect and the lack of stability, there was just no way that I could do it regularly. So it's 3 years later and you're gonna start making videos now. I hope you guys stick around, and I hope you invite your friends, because this is gonna be one wild ride as I talk about what's happened in the last 3 years and keep telling you the pieces that are happening in the future. Like I had mentioned earlier, I am 2 weeks out from top surgery. I'll talk to you about my feelings about top surgery. I'll talk to you about other pieces of transition, what it's like to get jobs as a trans person. There's so much that I can talk about now that I couldn't talk about before. I hope that you keep coming back so that you can hear more of my story. Because I think that if it resonates with you, you need to hear some of it maybe, because you need to know you're not alone. And if it doesn't resonate with you, you need to hear it so that you can understand a new perspective in life. Because just like I don't know what it's like to be a straight woman, really, or a cisgender man. Like, I don't have experience with those things. It's by listening to each other that we learn and grow. And learning and growing is the whole point. So come back, listen to more, and I'll talk to you later. Peace out.